I think that's probably the best use of these guys is largely that ambiance of something big and old happened here.
Ambience that tries to kill you.
Yeah, like all things in D&D.
Yes.
This is a mood setter, but with death.
The mood is death.
Hi, I'm Emmy.
And I'm James.
And welcome back to the Bestiary Monster Manual A through Z. And James, what are we discussing today?
We're talking about the Gorgon, sort of, those creatures inspired by ancient Greek myths, snakes for hair, turn you to stone, that kind of thing?
No.
No?
No? Bull.
Bull.
It's a bull.
It's a bull.
It's a bull made of metal.
Bull made of metal.
Bull made of metal.
No snakes?
No snakes.
No.
Still like petrifies you though, but not with its eyes, because it doesn't really have like eyes like that. It's breath. Poison breath. But instead of poisoning you, it petrifies you.
So yeah, the Gorgon in D&D is nothing like the Greek myth-inspired Medusa and her sisters. And we were really confused by that the first time we came across this.
So we did a Google. Well, you did a Google specifically.
I did a Google. And I did a deep dive into mythology, which I love doing. So the question of, why is the Gorgon in D&D a metal-encased bull and not Snake Lady is a really interesting one. And it's the possible answer to this question has its origins... Oranges? Has its origins back in the year 1607 in a book called A History of Four-Footed Creatures.
Which sounds like a good and proper bestiary to me, which is,
Indeed.
What we named the show after.
And in this, the author is essentially doing that kind of, later Middle Ages thing of writing and talking about animals that he's never actually seen and is going purely on hearsay and description.
Yeah.
And the idea is kind of based off what he just refers to as a Gorgon, which he says is a four-legged bull-like creature that eats toxic herbs and so has this sort of deadly poison breath. You think, okay, well that's something that Mr. Gygax may have come across at some point in inspiration from mythology, but where does it being armored in metal comes from? This is actually a bit more rooted in ancient Greek myth.
So we're returning back.
Yeah. In the story of Jason and the Argonauts and the many trials and tribulations that they encounter on their journeys, there are creatures called the Colchis bulls, as in that they are bulls from the island of Colchis. And they are bronze, armored in bronze, and sort of just kind of kill anybody who comes too close to them. Bulls obviously being quite significant in ancient Greek myth. They're tied to the wrath of the gods. Zeus in particular, I think.
Yeah, I think at one point he becomes a bull for several
reasons.
Trash reasons.
Just God damn it, Zeus.
I know.
But yeah, so glad you picked up on that one. So yeah, the possible answer, of course it's very hard to know for certain, is that it was kind of a combination of these ideas and they kind of thought, sure,
I guess.
it's a metal bull.
And if you look at it in the art, it's a
metal
bull. This guy is actually kind of nasty looking. He really looks pretty deadly. I know I was thinking of Kate Bull and with the way the horns are, which I know those are a particularly scary monster. In real life, the design along the spines here is so ornate, it almost looks artistic.
Well, I mean, that's a bit that really stands out to me because, of course, typically bulls, armored or not, don't have spined ridges along their backs, so this almost makes it look slightly reptilian and otherworldly. And then of course you've got this poisonous, petrifying breath being snorted out of those bovine nostrils. Do bulls count as bovine?
I believe they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cow.
Okay.
They're still a cow.
Are they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cow. Yeah,
Okay.
Cow, yeah. And they're fairly straightforward. I mean, the biggest thing that I think is very interesting about the build of these guys is that they are in fact a monstrosity. They are not a construct. Underneath, this guy is still flesh and blood. He's just got metal for armor, which is bizarre and interesting. And we couldn't find anything in the book, at the very least here in 5e. Maybe there's something in further back ones that describes the origin of...
There's probably some supplemental material out there that covers it, but not here. It's actually one of the shortest entries in the monster manual. It's only got kind of 2 points about it. That kind of talks about how its own bodily oils like lubricate its
plates and its squeaks,
its joints and its points.
Yep. And then it eats its enemies later. Like it doesn't hunt you because it's hungry, which again reminds me of the ways that actually some more deadly bovines actually behave in the wild. That they will attack and hunt people not because they eat them. But this guy will actually eat them eventually. It only really seems to eat petrified stone of the things it's petrified. So you might discover a Gorgon or multiple Gorgons hanging around because there's a bunch of like half-eaten stench.
Yeah. I mean, in the manual, it talks about how if you kind of encounter sort of crisscrossing, charging paths of broken tree and stone, you may find yourself stumbling into the territory of a Gorgon, and that's probably not a good thing.
Not really. They're a challenge rating 5, primarily just because they're big and they hit really, really hard. They are petrifying, and it's a very similar petrification that we've seen in previous things. Greater Restoration will undo it. You have to make saves a couple of times to stop it. It's a fairly standard petrifying breath, but attached to a significantly more physically deadly creature at this time.
It's not just going to turn you to stone, it's then going to smash you to pieces to eat you later on. And we were talking about how this isn't just, we think, a monster that you should just throw in as a random encounter. This is a great example of a creature that can be used to set a certain kind of ambiance, that can show that the area that they're encountering the party is one that is maybe dripping in mythology and mysticism and legend, and is a very old and interesting place.
I completely agree. I think that if you do run into one of these things, it implies that there is something powerful present. And you could really go to town with the mythology that you put into this guy. You could make it something, I don't know, immediately what goes to my mind is that because of the ties to gods in the original origins, that at the very least the Greek origins that you would see with the bulls and in Jason and the Argonauts, that seems to me that maybe these guys would be in areas where a god was particularly powerful or had an ancient temple. That's where my brain immediately goes to the roots of that. But there's
or maybe
a million and one reasons.
Like the result of some ancient ritual or something. That's arguably the great thing about its origins being so open-ended and nebulous here, that you can make them whatever you want. Thank you for joining us again here at the Bestiary Monster Manual A to Z. Where did the gore go? The Gorgon got the gore, and the gore gone in the Gorgon because now it's made of stone. If you understood what I just said, please let us know in the comments down below. We love hearing from you, and while you're there, you can like the video, you can subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much to anybody who's done so already, and if you haven't, why not? While you're there, you'll find our various social media presences, and check out some of our previous works here, and join us next time when we examine the weird mishmash of creatures that is the Grell.